Let's say you have a model which you have to deep etch and transplant onto a different background. Yet there's quite a complicated shadow sitting underneath the body, and merely painting black underneath the model to kind of fake the shadow just isn't going to cut it. What you're going to have to do is make an exact copy of the original shadow and place it onto a separate layer underneath the model. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do now. Now this image is completely unretouched, so you can use it to practice some of the other techniques I've shown you. And I've provided it in the resources folder, and it's the JPEG called Hold Shadow. So I've gone ahead and already deep etched Rebecca here. And so what I'll do is I'll switch on the deep etched layer and switch on the green layer which I've created, which is sitting underneath it. And as we can see, there is no shadow. So I'm going to use calculations to create a copy of the original shadow. So the first thing we need to do is come up to Image, Calculations, and here's our source 1 and source 2. And under layer for both sources, we need to select background. Under source 2, we also need to select background. Now because the shadow is not really a color, it's more like a shade of grey. So the best way to bring out maximum contrast and to bring out the shadow is under the channels, we're going to select grey in source 1, and the channel for source 2, we're also going to select grey. And you can see that the shadow has suddenly become a lot darker. Now I'll click OK, and in my channels palette, we can see I've created a new alpha channel called alpha 1. All we really need to keep in this alpha channel is just the shadow, so we need to delete what we don't need. So I'm going to jump onto my lasso tool with the L key and scoop up just the shadow, just like this. Invert this selection, Command-Shift-I, and I'm going to fill the rest of this selection, which we don't need, with white. So white is my foreground color. So to dump my foreground color into this selection, I just need to hold down Option Delete, and we've filled it with white. Command D to deselect. Now I need to refine this shadow and delete those extra bits that I don't need. So B for my brush tool, making sure that I'm currently at 100%. Increase my brush size a little bit with the right bracket key, and I'm just going to brush over those areas which I don't really need. Before I go any further, I might just go up to my brush options here and untick Shape Dynamics just to get rid of that tapered edge effect. And I'll continue brushing. So I can get a nice smooth edge to my shadow. Just like this. I might just soften this part of the shadow a little bit, so I'll bring down the opacity of my brush by hitting 3 for 30% and just brush over this area just to soften it just a little bit. And in essence, this is the reverse mask of what I need for my shadow. So I can hit Command-I, and that's virtually a copy of the mask that I need. Before I go any further, I'm going to go back into my layers palette, and just above my green layer, I'm going to create a new layer and fill it with black. Now I've currently already got black as my background color, so to dump my background color into this layer, I just have to hit Command-Delete, and now that layer is filled with black. Remember, if you don't have black as either your foreground or your background, you can bring up your default black and white foreground and background just by hitting the D key, like this. And then you can flip between the black and the white as your foreground and background just by hitting the X key, like so. Back into my channels palette, click on my alpha channel, Command click on the alpha channel, so I've made a selection of that white area, back into my layers palette, and with my black layer selected, I just have to click Add Layer Mask, and voila, there's our shadow. Now there are only a couple of little things we need to do now, and that is to make sure that this shadow blends in well with whichever new background you're going to place this image onto. Make sure your shadow's layer style is not under normal but under multiply, and also you can reduce the opacity of your shadow depending on how strong you need that shadow to be. So if I scroll my opacity down to the left and set it at about, say, 75%, that's looking okay. So all you need to do now is either drag both these two layers onto your new background, or drag your new background so it sits underneath your shadow layer. And that's how you create a shadow from the original.